Good afternoon. My name is Lou Mintzer. I manage the product team at HomeSnap. HomeSnap's a real estate startup. We're based in Washington, D.C. Why don't I get started here? You guys got to help me out. Raise your hand, or even easier, just wink at me if you've heard of HomeSnap before. All right, cool. A couple hands, a couple of winks. This guy right here is just blinking at me. So today, I want to talk to you about must-have mobile experience design. Let me start with a premise I think we all agree. Mobile right now is just blowing up. Some people say that software is eating the world. I think it's also fair to say that mobile is eating all the minutes, because the amount of time that people spend on their mobile phone using mobile apps is ballooning, because mobile has introduced whole new forms of media and communication and commerce and entertainment. And here's the thing. If you want to see who's winning, all you have to do is take a look at the top charts. I pulled this from App Annie, but you know the drill. Just go on iTunes or open the Google Play Store, and you can see the apps that are soaking up all the downloads day in and day out. But sometimes for people like me and people like you, it can be frustrating to look at the top charts, because the fact is, it is really, really hard to build an app that can crack into those charts. Some even more bad news. Even if you manage to have a great launch and get an article on the front page of TechCrunch, or you get to the #1 spot in Hacker News, or you drop $10,000 on Facebook mobile install ads, you're barely going to be able to crack into the top 100, and you certainly won't be able to maintain that position. Just for some context, if you want to get into the top 100 in your category, like lifestyle or entertainment, it takes about 4,000 or 5,000 downloads per day. If you want to crack into the top 100 overall, you need between 15,000 and 25,000 downloads per day. So it's challenging. But here's the good news, right? There is a path forward. And I think there's a recipe, and that's what I want to begin to share with you guys today. So the key is you need to build an app with a must-have user experience. And I define that as an app that people will want to use, that people will make a habit out of using, and that people will tell their friends about. Because that's really the only way that you can tap into and harness the power of word of mouth. And word of mouth, in my experience, is by far the most affordable and most sustainable way to achieve the number of downloads that you need to get a spot and maintain that spot in the top charts. This is something that my team at HomeSnap has managed to do on and off over the past 2 years. And I don't think we've cracked the code yet, and we haven't perfected it. But getting in that top charts and being the highest rated real estate app is something that we are striving towards on a daily basis. So real quick, for those of you who didn't raise your hand or give me a seductive wink, HomeSnap, it's a real estate app, and it's out right now. You can download it for iPhone, Android, iPad, and it does something that's pretty cool. You just have to take a picture of any house in the USA to find out all about it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how that works in a second. So let me frame my conversation today. I'm going to throw out to you guys 3 insights, a couple of tips, a couple of stories that I learned while building HomeSnap. Let me just jump into the first one. Find something that's tried and true and do it better. So I don't mean go out there and make a copycat of another app. The opposite. I'm saying you got to innovate. You got to find something that people are already doing and then build an app that can enhance that experience. So HomeSnap's in the business of trying to help people find and buy a new home. And so this is a pretty old problem. Before we even launched HomeSnap, there was a lot of companies in the digital space trying to solve this. You have Zillow and Trulia and Redfin and Homes.com and Realtor.com, and there's a score more. And so one of the things that all these companies try to do is tell you which schools go with which homes, right? Schools are an attribute that potential homebuyers really care about, because most people want their kid to go to a good school. But if you take a close look, what most of these companies are doing is telling you which schools are geographically nearest to which homes. And you guys probably know that the school that's closest to your home is not necessarily the one that your child would go to. So we wanted to solve this problem. So what we did was figure out a way to access school attendance zones, and then we built an algorithm to do point and a polygon math. And then we crawled through every home in the United States to figure out which school districts they belong to. So now when you use HomeSnap and you snap a picture of a home, thanks guys, I was wondering when my seat was going to get here. you'll actually see the schools your kid would go to, so the elementary school, the middle school, the high school. And now it's become a competitive advantage that consumers recognize, and that's been a net add for us. Now, as you guys think about what you can do better, or what niche or niche you can make your specialty, I would encourage you to leverage mobile to provide more convenience to your end users. I think about it this way. The mobile phone is literally the node that connects the internet to the real world. And I think we're still in early days in this mobile platform shift. And I think there's still a myriad number of ways to provide more convenience to people. So how can you leverage this node to make it more convenient for people to live their lives? What can you help them do? Can you help them do something in fewer taps, or do something faster, or do something in a more fun way, with more performance, with better privacy controls, with a new way to share social context? Think about it, because I do think you have to pick something and be the best at it. Another tip, it's easier to sell painkillers than vitamins. And here's what I mean by that. Every time you build a new product or a new product feature, you're choosing to solve a problem. And so be cognizant about that problem that you've chosen to solve, because some are much more attractive to solve than others. The problems that cause people time or stress or money to solve themselves are quite often the most attractive, because if you can really put a dent in that pain, your users will find you. And what that does is drive your user acquisition costs way down. On the other hand, if your app is like an enhancement or a nice to have, or it's like a vitamin, like it's really good for you in the long run, but it's not necessarily going to help you right here and now, I think you're destined to find you'll spend a lot of time and a lot of money telling people about your app and why their app is so good for them, and it's a totally different paradigm. All right, let me jump into insight number 2. Make it easier to accomplish a workaround. So before we even launched the HomeSnap app, we had a real estate website. And one of the things that we discovered early on was that Google was sending us a lot of traffic for keyword searches. So like people were Googling for a specific address. And thinking about it, that meant people were seeing a house in the real world that they liked, writing down the address, going home, getting on their computer, pulling up Google, Googling for that address, and finding HomeSnap. And fundamentally, this is the workaround that HomeSnap improves. So with HomeSnap, you see a house you like, you just pull out your phone, open HomeSnap, take a picture. HomeSnap taps into the sensors in your mobile phone, the GPS, the compass, the accelerometer, the gyroscope, sometimes the barometer. And that's how we figure out where you're standing, which direction you're facing, how the phone's articulated in your hand, and then we build up a mathematical model that lets us interpolate the house that's on the other side of your viewfinder. And so over time, we've added more product features and more data sources, but still fundamentally, it is this basic workaround that gets people to hear about HomeSnap, that gets people to try HomeSnap, and that gets people to tell their friends about it. Now, when you think about what kind of workaround you can build, my advice would be to eat your own dog food, and your product is the dog food. You have to become the expert in your product category. You have to become the super user, because that's the only way to truly understand all the competitive dimensions that are at play, and that's the best way to achieve balance. So you can't just rely on user feedback reports, because what I've found is when users fill out feedback reports, what they tend to do is gloss over small items. But yet, all of those small items do accumulate, and they impact the overall workflow in a negative way. By the same token, you do need to get other people to try your app, and you do need to do behavioral interviews, and you do need to collect user feedback reports. And most importantly, you need to actually watch people using your app. And when you do, something you're going to quickly discover is that your users are gone in 60 seconds. Attention is a fleeting commodity, and I think even more so when it comes to mobile apps. And so if your app does nothing else, make a good first impression. 60 seconds is probably generous. You probably have even less than that. You got to create an aha moment somehow. And what your aha moment is depends on the problem that you're trying to solve. You could do it with better graphics or better data or game mechanics. There's lots of different ways, but don't forget about it. Rather, I'd say keep it top of mind, because creating that aha moment is vital. All right, on to my third insight. You've got to iterate and find your focus with narrow and actionable goals. So I'll tell you that it feels like I've already built HomeSnap like 5 or 6 times just in the past 2 years. So first we built HomeSnap for iPhone for South by Southwest 2012. Then we built HomeSnap for iPad for Christmas. Then we built HomeSnap for Android for the spring homebuyer season. And then in March, Apple announced the iOS 7 Human Interface Guidelines at WWDC. And so we quickly decided that we wanted to be the very first real estate app that was completely redesigned for iOS 7. And we were in a pretty aggressive time frame. I mean, this is like major surgery for an app. So we'd open up the project and go back to Balsamic and touch every nib and label and user control. And we took it right up to the deadline, pulled a couple all-nighters at the end, and we didn't submit till Apple till 4 a.m. on the Saturday just before they released iOS 7. But this bet paid off for us big time, because when the App Stores refreshed and people upgraded their devices, HomeSnap was on the front page of both the iPhone and the iPad App Store. And so we were able to get a lot of new users who started using the app, make a habit out of using the app, and started telling their friends about using the app. Now, when you're setting these goals for yourself, I would encourage you to make your goals cyclical. Because really, it's not just the act of setting the goal that matters, but it's the effort that goes into achieving that goal, and then the opportunity to reflect back upon your experiences and the successes and the failures that you achieved along the way. And that's what helps you set more aggressive, but yet even more achievable goals going forward. So I just mentioned the business cycle in the real estate industry with the spring homebuyer season and the winter conferences and new iOS devices around the holidays. But I want you to think about what are the business cycles in your industry, and how could you set goals around those cycles that you can harness to your own advantage. Finally, small successes compound over time. So I don't want you to leave this talk feeling like you have to build a category-killing app on your first swing. I would say that's probably impossible and not the best path forward. Rather, just focus on doing one feature really, really good. And if you repeat that process over and over and over again, the value will accumulate to your user and ultimately accrue to the app developer. And that's how you can become really successful, through a series of small yet smart decisions. Let me wrap up. Mobile's blowing up. If you want to see who's winning, just check out the App Store. But the thing is, it's really, really tough to build an app that can crack the top charts. And I think the best way is to build an app with a must-have user experience. You've got to build an app that people will want to use, that people will make a habit out of using, that people will tell their friends about, because that's the only way to sustainably harness the power of word of mouth. And so I shared with you 3 insights that I learned while building HomeSnap over the past 2 years. Find something that's tried and true and do it better. Make it easier to accomplish a workaround. And find your focus with narrow and actionable goals. And these are insights that I apply at HomeSnap on a daily basis. And I hope that you'll take them to heart and apply them to your own app. And I truly wish you all the best of luck in finding the success that you desire. On a final note, I hope you'll seek me out on Twitter or say hi at Modev. I really need to hire an Android developer, so if that's you, come and see me. And if you really, really want to pay it forward, download HomeSnap, then go back to the App Store and leave it a 5-star rating. Thanks, you've been a great audience.